Terry, thank you for your wonderful tour out at Watervale. And Doug, thank you for your historical aspect of that area. It was a great group. You guys did good, I'll tell you, because that was quite a hike. So what do we know how many we ended up with? Close to 30. I think the sheriff has posted photos on Facebook and via an email, so take a look. So we've completed 2 outings. We have 2 more to fulfill. I finally was able to talk to somebody who's going to head up tours at the Mescal movie set. Just for some background information, the company that was running Old Tucson Studios was fired. Along with that was the tour of Mescal. In fact, the gal lives in Tombstone. So this next part, I'm going to turn over to Doug. Here again, if you have any ideas, let me know.
Okay. I've got copies of the flyer. Have any of you ever been out to the Mescal site? Yeah, we snuck in there one day, and I think Dan lives out there. Anyway, Mescal appeared in. Yeah, it appeared in Tombstone, and it was the hometown for young writers, and it was, it's been in a, for Monty Walsh, okay. And what was the fast draw contest movie? Quick and the Dead, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, Mescal, they're having an old-fashioned barn raising. But we're raising the whole damn town on April 10 and 11, and again on the 17th and 18th, starting at 8:30 in the morning. Mescal is out at 1538 North Mescal Road. That's right off the interstate on the way to Tucson. It's under new ownership, and they're excited to restore the town to its former glory. We're looking for volunteers to help us rebuild. We're looking for skilled workers as well as general laborers. And if you're interested, I have a contact number. And they're going to provide drinks and snacks, but they want it to be potluck, which means you got to bring a dish. Okay, I've got the flyers here if anybody gets interested in them. I'm out of town in Cortez next week, but I will go out there on the 17th. Does anybody want to join me on the 17th? Okay, great. We'll let them know.
I apologize, I had the wrong thing with me. Thanks to all the good helpers here at the Corral, we have filled up the year for speakers. In May, Bob Nilsson, in Cochise. In June, the English give us going to reenact Katie Elder. In July, Greg McEwen is going to talk about the Siberian doughboys on the borderland. More, but I'll let you guess.
Hey, who's up next? Oh.
So I get start on April 10th. First thing that's going to happen is down in Benson, there are going to be so many Porsches, your head's going to spin. Porsche Club's coming to Benson. On April 10th, here, we're having our Rose Tree Weekend. It's a big deal in Tombstone. There are going to be a ton of people here. If you come and get here early and park. On April 10th, our historic Tombstone Restoration Society having a grand opening ribbon cutting at our caboose down behind the library. The library used to be the old train station, and it's 118-year anniversary of the first train to Tombstone. The caboose has been restored, and see it. On April 17th, we're having the Desert Donkey Dash. This will be the second one. The first one was a lot of fun. There were all these like donkeys running down Allen Street. And they go on long runs out around the hills and come back. This is a big deal. And that's going to be at 8 in the morning, 17th. And then at 2 p.m. on the 17th, Shootout Arena is going to have another bull riding. And on the 18th, the next day after that, well, on the 17th, it's 2 in the afternoon, and the next day on the 18th at noon.
Doug and I have been talking about getting some more trail rides going. A lot of people don't like to do them in the summertime, but there are places we can go, and so we're trying to look at some different ones. He and I have been on a couple of ones by ourselves. We were up in Paradise Valley, which was a real kick, and so we're working on that. There hasn't been anything else big coming around. Still a lot of people shut down, so if you hear of anything or someplace you think you might like to go, let us know, and we'll either scout it out, or if it's someplace we've been, we'll know if we can do it or not. The other thing is, I really apologize for all these uncomfortable seats in here. And we've got a donation jar out there. Anybody that's not a member and enjoys tonight, or a member too, and enjoys what went on tonight, feel free to drop a couple bucks in there. Nobody is required to do it, but not too long ago, our finances were really bad, and a lot of people have been helping out with that, and the rest of us have been getting our dues paid on time, so it really helps. The organization is growing, and anybody that's in Tombstone for any length of time, we encourage you to join, because we do have a lot of fun. And now I apologize once again for these chairs. I'm going to go sit.
Pony up jar. This is for members who don't wear their Western. If you didn't wear Western tonight, you owe the jar a quarter. This is all about George, because we're trying to whittle down that huge fortune he put together in Campfire.
In May is Wyatt Earp Day, Tombstone. And that's going to be another big blowout weekend with a ton of people, a lot of events.
Brought the paper. Yes. The Arizona History Convention is coming up Thursday at 2:30. Is that right, Deborah? A Zoom convention. I will be speaking to fantastic Cochise County Cowboys. Yes, Grant Wheeler. Yeah. Got information? Harold, you-
Okay, I have things that I really enjoyed reading. And one is from True West. And this is January of 2021. This is a fascinating story about Geronimo being chased by Richard. Geronimo is no way hiding in a and you may check which you and just be sure to bring them back. All right, then I have the Journal of Arizona History. It's the winter of 2018, you may have already, but it's socialized. It's about the mule shoot. And we used to go out there, beautiful place, but I didn't know the story. This is a story about Jessica Wakern from Chicago and how she became owner of the Mule Shoe Ranch. Her unusual life is written in a factual account of how she was with the Chicago's social elite and incidences in her life that changed her direction for living out the last half of her life in Arizona. It is now run by the Nature Conservancy, the Forest Service, and the Bureau of Land Management. We have hiked at the Muleshoe Ranch a number of times and enjoyed the beautiful scenery. It is very enlightening to know the history and how it became a conservancy. And then there is a book that I read this last month. It is called Blood and Thunder by Hampton Sides. It is an epic story of Kit Carson and the conquest of the American West beginning in 1846, with American soldiers arriving in Santa Fe and ending at the Battle of Adobe Walls in 1864. You will read about how Kit Carson was involved in all of this, including his life from birth to death, 1809 to 1868. And the Los Angeles Times wrote that this book was a masterpiece, and it is very enjoyable. This book can be bought on Amazon, or it can be checked out at our local library. Oh, is that right?
Yes.
It is a good book. I really enjoyed it.
And before you take off, the Cochise County Historical Society has gifted us a whole bunch of these. And we're going to put one in the library and decide, I think we're going to give the other ones to Karen to use as prizes. So.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, and thank you to Bill. He is the president of the Cochise County Historical Society. Has anyone got any cowboy poetry? Not yet, okay.
Good evening. As a philatelist, or a stamp collector, since I was about 8 years old, I've been learning about explorers, countries of the world, birds, animals, and, of course, history. Probably little known to this Corral is a wonderful museum and library in Tucson near the U of A on Euclid Avenue. It's called the Postal History Museum. And I've been going there for about 20 years, taking family groups and community clubs that I belong to. The Postal History Museum and the Sluice Library is of interest to the Westerners, not only because of the 30,000 books it has on post offices in the territory of Arizona and the state of Arizona, but it also has a huge collection on the Civil War. And scholars and authors and many people go there to do research. It's even got a few artifacts. One second here. Okay, it even has the history of the post offices in this area. But on the wall, as you walk into the library, are two huge paintings done by Cal Peters in the 1970s. One of them is the stagecoach robbery in Wickenburg of the 1900s, and the other one is the Great Train robbery here in Fairbanks. The museum also has the original post office, believe it or not, of Naco, Arizona from 1895, which served as the exchange mail between the U.S. and Mexico during the Mexican Revolution. It even has the old mailboxes that you had to use 2 letters to open up to get your letters. You had to use A or Z, that type of thing. The post office for Tombstone was applied for by Richard Gerd of the Gerd Museum, and on October 25th, 1878, and established on December 2nd, 1878. The town of Watervale, which we went to, which was did not have a post office. I had the lady look it up in the book there in the library for me. Unfortunately, it's not open right now because of COVID, but it's just wonderful, and we could take a group there sometime. It's inside to see the post office and everything. It'd be really fun. And I just want to remind you all to come back during the intermission, and I'm selling 50-50 tickets. Thank you.
Okay, no food or drink in the auditorium, but it is out there in the lobby. Let's take a 5-minute break. The restrooms are out there if you need them, and come on back in here at the sound of the cowbell and buy your tickets. $1 a ticket and 6 for $5? Yeah, that's right. Okay. On that.
So are the diamonds not involved in this now? No. Just Cochise? Yeah. Well, keep us in the loop. Yeah.
Wait a second, we need to get you guys up here. How do I get back?
Okay, Bob, knock him dead.
Okay, hello everyone. Still got some folks getting tickets. Somebody left a large ring of keys outside the front door this evening. Check your pockets. Are you missing your keys? I haven't seen them. What's that ring look like? On the side street. Okay. Okay.
Debbie has yours as usual.
Yeah. Okay. Karen's holding them up back here. There's the ring of keys. Okay, would you like to come up and introduce our speaker?
Okay, am I doing okay this way? Okay. Tonight, John Donahue and Bob Nelson will speak on Highway 80 from Benson to Douglas. Highway 80, America's Broadway, was the second transcontinental roadway paved after only Route 66. It passes through Tombstone and Bisbee and heads on to Douglas. So, on to our speakers.
Yeah, okay. Well, good evening. Bob likes cars, and I like cars, and Highway 80, is about cars. And, we've been hearing this sort of rumor about this rocket car down to Douglas hitting
Yes.
258 miles an hour back in, 1959 or something?
I think so. I think that's when it was.
Yeah,
But when we were real young.
when we were real young. Oh,
Yes.
my. But we'll talk about that later. And right now, let's, go to the next slide.
Okay.
Good. So this is what it's about, our historic Highway 80, which we tend to call the Broadway of America, selecting from one of its many names, which you'll see later. Next slide. Bob, what would you say about
Yeah.
this?
Okay, I've got another one here. Let me pull this out for you to see. In 1926, this is the official map of where you see the red. The Highway 80, it was US 80. It was the first federal highway from coast to coast. It went from Tybee Island, Georgia, which is near Savannah, all the way to San Diego. And in 1926, you can see the dotted stuff. That is not paved. That is gravel. And the red areas, it was paved. There was only about 200 miles of it paved of the whole state back in 1926. And over the years, they started paving more and more of it. And I had a newspaper article from 1934 that said, it's from Tucson, said finally the road is paved between Tucson and Phoenix, and now you can go as fast as 35 miles an hour.
It took them a long time to get it paved. Can we get the next slide? In the beginning, sort of in the beginning, the Mormon battalion came all the way from Santa Fe on their way to San Diego, and they came down, dipped into Mexico, and went up to San Pedro, and they were attacked by a herd of wild bulls. 81 bulls died that day. 12 soldiers were terribly injured, and then they went on. Next slide. The red line along here, the guy running that expedition was Lieutenant Colonel Cook, and the red line there is sort of where he came up in our part of the world. But you can see how back then the trail dipped down across what became the border after the Mexican War. Next slide. There were stagecoaches, which is a whole other day's presentation. Yeah. Next slide. And there were trains. And on the first Thursday in May, you are going to hear all about the 10 million railroads that were in Cochise County.
Actually, it was 14, and hopefully, I have jury duty for some reason that week, so hopefully I will be here.
Yes. If not, we'll fake it. But Bob. Yeah, Bob, come on over on this side. Because we have to talk to this thing. Next slide. Okay, so in the late 1800s, bicyclists were having a tough time, just like they are today. And they started something back east called the Good Roads Movement, which was picked up very quickly by the early automobile people, because the roads back then were basically mud. Next slide.
Yeah, and this right here is from 1915. It was a report on Cochise County roads, and they spent up to $40,000 on the nice roads. And I see here where they put a bridge in between Curtis and Benson, and it was $8,500. So big bucks. I'll give this to anybody who wants this.
But you multiply that times about 12, maybe 13, and you're going to get our money today.
Yes.
Even still, it was a deal. The state of Arizona, 2 years after it became a state, decided that this would be the route of what everybody sort of hoped someday would be a national highway, and this would be our part of it, and they called it here in Arizona the Borderland Highway. Next slide. So, this is where the presentation goes off the rails. This road has been called everything under the sun. And most lately, the Daughters of the Confederacy got the state to call it 1961 the Jefferson Davis Highway. And then in 2018, it's now been designated a state historic route, which is neat.
It's state route now instead of US 80.
Yes. Oh, boy. Bob, talk about
Yes.
gravel and oil.
Okay, this is a kind of an interesting little subject, and I don't know if you can see it from here, but there was a guy, a Scotsman named McAdams, John Loudon McAdams. He was born in the 1700s. He died in 1836, but he designed a road design called the McAdam Road Design. And what it basically consisted of was large rocks underneath and smaller rocks on the top with a bevel to it to keep the wagon wheels, which were steel, from digging in. And he said that if you could fit the rock in your mouth, it was good for the top. If not, you had to break it. So I'm sure they had a lot of sick people with diseases from that. But anyway, what happened was for years in Europe and America, they used this McAdam road design, and even road people, when they go to school, they learn about the McAdams Road. But at the turn of the century, when cars started coming out, they weren't real popular because they ran over people's cows, they made noise, and people just didn't like them. But they would cause a vacuum going fast over these roads, and it would suck the dust up and make these big dust clouds. So they came up with the idea of putting tar over this, and that's where you get the term tarmac. McAdams and tar.
Next slide. There's a bigger picture of what Bob was describing there. And yes, tarmac, and then we now call it tarmac like airports?
Yeah, I don't know
that
where
came-
I think it's a British term.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah. Next slide. Oh, all right.
okay, yeah.
Bob found this thing, this round thing, and it was on this bridge on the left in Benson.
It's about this big around. What it is, the old highway, when it went in 1926, they had bridges, and this bridge still exists today. It's over by the Keyberry Mission in Benson. There's 2 bridges there, and they're about 150 feet off the highway now. So they have realigned it, and there's some in Curtis between Tombstone and Benson, and then John found one.
Well, I've got right down outside of town, going south on the old Bisbee Highway, there's this beautiful old bridge, and the road is still dirt, and it sort of goes to somebody's house, but not really. You can still go around it, but the bridge is beautiful.
What, 1918, you say?
1918, and it was built by prison labor back then. Next slide. Oh, good, here we go. Okay, now this was the dream. They started getting organized. People were getting organized in the early teens and 20s.
Yeah.
And that was a dream. That we would have one big all-weather highway across the United States. And because roads, as you can see, back then were what they were. Next slide. The federal government created the 1916 Highway Act that started getting the federal government involved in the planning, and this started becoming real. Next, and then here we go. This was the first all-weather transcontinental highway, and it opened in 1926. Now, that's not to say it was paved all the way,
Yes.
but Arizona, tell them about Cochise County. that we did.
Cochise County, and I'll read it off of this right here. Near the mic so you can hear me. Okay, well, what it says here, at the end of 1926, which Arizona highways received their first numbers and standard road signs were designed, the state highway system comprised of 2,034 miles of roadway. Of those, 208 miles were paved with concrete or asphalt. 1,207 miles were surfaced with gravel, and 259 miles were graded and but not drained.
So they had the route, but they didn't have the paving. But here in Cochise County, because there was so much money in Bisbee and the smelters in Douglas, that
Yeah, they went from Bisbee down to Douglas was paved in what, 1912?
yes, starting, and then the bridges went in 1913, 1914.
Yeah.
We were way ahead of the curve here, and the rest of the country sort of
Which
caught
is
up.
probably why they chose this route to be the Highway 80,
There
because we
wasn't-
were already prepared for it.
Yeah, these two towns were huge back then economically, huge.
And an interesting fact about when you went to Bisbee, what you had to do, if you had a Model T, they had a gravity-fed gas tank. So they actually had to, if they were going uphill, they would run out of gas. So they would have to put their car in reverse and back up that grade.
If you got stuck on
Yeah.
Mule Hill Pass today, you can try that trick too.
What town is that
Which one?
on the screen?
That's one you'll never go to.
Bisbee?
No, I don't know where it is.
Oh. Because the brick building
Yes.
in the back looks like the stock exchange.
Well, it probably
in
was.
Bisbee.
It's an old picture from then. Next slide. Oh, and back then, I like RVs. Back then were the first RVs. People realized they had the Ford Model GT truck, and you could put a box on the back and emulate Ford and Westinghouse on their big trip in their fancy one with the chauffeur and the cook. You could have your own.
And we are spoiled now, because back then, when you went someplace, you didn't go from Tombstone to Tucson. You had to plan a trip, you had to have spare tires, spare tools, spare gasoline. It's not like today, so.
Oh, and
We're
the,
spoiled.
the water bag,
Yeah, water
which
bag.
we both remember.
Yeah, and you had what's called 255 air conditioning, that's both windows rolled down.
Oh, and the round thing.
Yeah.
What did you call the round thing?
Well, they had
That went on the windows.
they had a swamp cooler
The swamp cooler,
that they actually mounted to windows.
yes. Next slide. Oh, the first trailer courts came to serve the motorists that wanted a place to stay overnight. And these are pictures of the one that's still down there in Bisbee. And
Shady Dell.
Shady Dell. It's sort of boutique-y now, but you still get the idea of how nice it must have been to pull off a highway and have a nice, safe place to stay the night and friendly people.
Yeah, that created an industry in itself, because before everybody used to take trains. When people started getting independent and driving their automobiles, well, they needed gas stations, they needed restaurants, they needed places to repair, places to stay, and that's where the motor hotel came from.
Yes,
So,
like your one in Benson right
Yes.
here, which is still there and in pretty good shape.
yeah, 1928 it was built.
Yes. Next slide. And Bob knows about this. This was a pretty big construction project.
Yes, the highway went, Highway 80 went in 26 and went down to, from Benson to Tombstone, Bisbee, Douglas, then back up to Rodeo, New Mexico, and then up to Lordsburg. And there was a dirt road that went to Wilcox, and Wilcox really wanted people to be driving through Wilcox, but the people in Tombstone, Bisbee, and Douglas did not want the road to be put in there because it would cut them out. And they did it in 1941. There was fights, people shot at, and until they finally put the road in, and it did pretty much kill Bisbee, Douglas, and Tombstone to the traffic, but it cut 75 miles off the trip to New Mexico going through Highway 86, and it was put in 1941.
And there's your,
Yes, there's
I like the Mercury. Yep.
yes.
So,
The car's still around, but the paint isn't so hot anymore.
but there's a Greyhound bus, and it looks like the Horseshoe Cafe was the bus station.
Yep, it was built in 1936, and if you want to come up later, I've got a bunch of, these are mainly Benson photos, and it's got a picture of the horseshoe, the original horseshoe in 1936, if you want to see it, so.
Was that a hotel upstairs at one time?
No, that was the quarters where the lady that owned it lived, and her daughter, or her granddaughter, was Lorene Whaley. And Lorene lived up there till she went off to college in 1968, so it was quarters up there.
And now we have something that Bob knows a lot about, and he's going to tell you about a gadget called the Angel Buggy.
Yes, I think I gave a talk back in, what was it, July of last year. And the Angel Buggy, it was used to carry nitroglycerin from where they would weigh it out into the building where they mixed it with the crushed pecan shell to make the dynamite. And there was a walkway that had all brass screws on it. You couldn't have any steel anywhere in case there was a spark. But it was called an angel buggy because if you hit a bump, you became an angel. True story. I've got one in the Benson Visitor Center if you want to see it.
Allen Street in Tombstone. You can see the bird cage back then and today, still pretty much the same. And a nice little trailer. Oh, and that's my friend Keith's Model A.
Nice.
It's in pretty good shape. Good. Yeah, and you know, Allen Street through the years, big fiestas and fairs. Originally, Highway 80 the red line came into town, went down Allen Street, and then hopped up and went over. And back before 1963, the blue line up on top was dirt, Fremont Street. And then in 1963, it was paved and became a truck route. but the cars kept coming along Allen Street. Next slide. So, here's a typical picture of Allen Street when all the cars were there and it was paved and what. And Dusty, our mayor, no, get the cars off Allen Street. And they had a big fight like the kind you have in Benson, same kind of thing.
Gunfights.
Bang, bang. And so he won, but he got kicked out in the next election. But the street still doesn't have cars, and Dusty's back being the mayor. So it worked out. Oh, boy.
That's the hill they had to back up.
Yes, it is.
In Bisbee.
Yes. Has everybody been on Old Divide Road? Oh, yes. Well, when you get to the tunnel down there in Bisbee, you just turn up to the left and you go up over the hill on this road. That was the road. And up at the top, you're on the Continental Divide. You dump a can of water on the ground, some of it will go that way, some that way.
Goes all the way to the Pacific
It
Ocean.
yeah, all the way to the Pacific.
It's not the official Continental Divide.
Pardon?
It's not the real Continental. No.
Well,
No.
they have a sign that says it is. And that, what?
Nobody knows why.
Well, if it's on a sign, it's gotta be true.
And it has, and they have that sign.
Yeah.
That sign is carved in stone.
But the real one's in New Mexico.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're right, it is.
Well, they're a bunch, I mean, but, okay, next one. Oh, now, if anybody likes baseball, you'll notice that this fella played for the 1919 White Sox, who became the Black Sox after they threw the series. And he played out here after they threw him out of Major League Baseball. He played in Warren in the ballpark, which is still the oldest ballpark in America that is open.
Yep.
It's older than Fenway in Boston, and it's older than the one that the Cubs play in.
And that is the lavender pit when it was inverted.
Yes. They've had inversions. But the Sacramento pit was sort of the start of what became the big giant lavender pit. And you can see the road sort of, oh, good luck.
There it is, Highway 80.
Good. Next slide. Oh, Bisbee. The road comes into town. It came down from Mule Hill, came down around, down Tombstone Canyon, right into town. And there's a picture from 1940 when they actually had stores there, when it was a real town. Before that, Safeway moved out somewhere and they make me get a plastic bag or a paper bag or something.
Paper.
Paper.
No
Yeah.
plastic.
No plastic. No. Now this,
Yeah, this is the Mule Tunnel. They were decided to go through the mountain because it was so hard to get the mules over it. But what they did was they go, where are we gonna find some people that could dig a tunnel in Bisbee? And they realized that their miners said that we can do it.
they can do it.
So it was built in 58, and that's what you go through right now.
Good. And then you go down to Douglas. Oh yeah, has everybody been to the Gadsden Hotel? Oh my, and the restaurant's back open again. This is the most beautiful lobby this side of the Fairmont in San Francisco.
Yes.
It is drop dead beautiful. The stairs going up there are white marble. The windows up above are large, original Henry Louis Tiffany stained glass that is, when Rosa and Florencio Lopez bought the place a few years ago, those windows were worth more than the hotel,
Yes, and they still are.
perhaps.
Yes.
Uh,
And Pancho Villa supposedly rode a horse up those stairs.
uh-oh.
That's what I've
Oh
heard.
yeah, you heard that?
I heard that.
I heard that. He
It
rode-
was
he rode right
written
up
on a
those
sign,
stairs.
so it's gotta be true.
It was one of his revolutions.
Yeah, he rode up
Yes.
the Continental Divide,
There's a
yes.
chip, yes.
Well, that's what they'll tell you at the Gadsden, that Pancho Villa's horse broke the stairs.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
It's,
The most beautiful part of the hotel, the owner,
oh, she's a kitty.
she's a doll, she's so nice.
And a nice lady. Now, here, we have another nice lady. who flew into Douglas one day to America's first international airport. But being fair, that wasn't so hard to do since Mexico was, what, a mile away? But still.
But she landed in McNeil before she landed in Douglas.
Yes, she did. I've got the newspaper article.
I got the pictures.
Do you?
And
Yeah.
then she went on to Douglas?
Yeah.
She had dinner with the women's club,
The
if I,
women's club, and when she was out in Petrol for one thing, they had to repair tires from the Cactus, and they used women's silk stockings to filter the gasoline for her plane.
That would work.
yeah.
Eleanor Roosevelt was also at the dedication of
Oh,
the
really?
Douglas
Really?
International Airport.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
yes.
That's a story.
It was the first international airport, I believe.
Yes.
Yes.
Next slide. So we have our beautiful road, and we want people to get off at exit 303 off I-10 and to spend an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours having a lovely drive down to Douglas. And then Bill's going to help us extend our knowledge of this up to Portal and Cave Creek Canyon and into New Mexico up to Lordsburg.
Yeah. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, the stop signs, they came out, there was the highway transportation officials, they came up with in 1926, the shape and the size and the color of the signs that were gonna be used nationally. Because each state, they used different things and they standardized it all then.
Bob, let me hold that up so they can really
Okay,
see
yeah.
it.
And a stop sign was yellow with black letters, and it was hexagon shaped, and they were that color, the yellow, until 1954. The red paints they had back then, that the pigments weren't good enough and they would fade. So after 54, they had perfected the red, so they went back to the red colors. Excuse me. And also, the states were a square with the state of Arizona. That's a state route, SR. And then the federal highways had a shield. And they were white with black letters. And they used these, what they call cat's eye reflectors. And I gave one to John. I had ordered some on eBay. I gave him a red one. And he goes, "Thanks, Bob." And he
Oh my God.
about broke it. He thought it was
I almost
candy.
ate it. I thought it was a ginger beef.
Many years ago, in my younger days, I was kicking around in Rodeo, New Mexico, on the side of Highway 80, looking through some brush and junk, and I found one of those, like in the upper right, the original old Highway 80 sign.
I hope you saved
One
it.
of the biggest regrets of my life, and one of my moves, I lost.
Ooh. Yeah, if you had that now, it'd be worth a lot.
Next slide. Now,
Oh, we have a question, John?
oh, I'm sorry.
One of those yellow signs outside my house when I lived on the East Coast up to 56,
Really?
maybe even later, and the whole bottom of the sign was all legalese about not parking within so many feet of the sign.
A lot of them had, like this says, through street stop. And I've seen them, this says, through traffic stop. And some of them had the cat's eyes in them. And later, the cat's eyes were made of plastic on the red ones. And now we've got this super duper Scotch Light reflective whiz-bang great stuff that I can't afford it by the foot now. But
Now, so Bob and I are starting the Arizona 80 Foundation to promote the highway, to promote historical tourism from I-10 down to the border. And in aid of that, why should Highway 66 have the best sign? No. So we're
yeah,
thinking
we're going to put a contest
a
out.
contest. And anyone can enter, anyone can win. We have two songs that are already out there. We got the Gunfight at the OK Corral, the Frankie Lane song. And we got Bob's Benson, Arizona song. Tell them about that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. John Carpenter, the guy who did Alien, his first student film in 1974 was called Dark Star. And when it starts out, he wrote a song called Benson, Arizona. And I don't know if any of you heard, if you go on YouTube and put Dark Scar Benson, Arizona song, you'll hear it. It's like a country western song. And we contacted one of the actors who has now passed away, but we said, why did he choose the name Benson, Arizona for the song? And he says, I don't know, but when my girlfriend and I were going back east to Chicago, we drove the southern route in July in my MGB, and he says, we pulled into Benson, and so I stood on the ramp of the depot, and they took a picture, and he sent us that picture, and I have that picture. It's pretty cool.
Song will break your heart. Oh.
Yes.
Next slide. Well, now, here we're back to reveal the true story of the rocket car. And I gotta confess, it being April 1st, that there's a product called Photoshop. But you can just imagine taking this, 1958 German Messerschmitt, sort of two people, one behind the other, maybe what, 20 horsepower?
If that.
If
yeah.
that, and putting a stage 4 Saturn rocket engine on it. Oh, that would have been so wonderful.
But
anyway.
That added Farfignugan.
Farfignugan,
Yes.
big time. Next slide. And that's it. Thank you.
So what is now the official name of that highway?
The historic,
Or historic Highway 80
Yes,
is what
the
this
historic.
No US, no.
no, it's called historic,
It was designated by the Tucson.
Historic Arizona Highway 80.
Is
That's
that what
the
it is?
formal name, yes.
Yeah, they put the signs up, and it was the Tucson Historical Society that got the designation. And if anybody wants the research material, it was online. I've got it. I can send it to anybody. It's a lot more information than you really want to know. So
Each slide you saw tonight, we could talk about for half an hour, each one. There's so much to this highway in such a short amount of distance.
yeah, and the good news is that the highway, it's basically in the same place it was in 1926, and John and I started on this project before the COVID hit, and after the COVID was starting to be over, people were ready to kill each other, their families, so they were taking road trips, so it was a perfect match. Come see Highway 80, come through Benson, Tombstone, Bisbee, Douglas, and we're gonna talk to Bill Cavalier about getting them up into Rodeo and,
Portal.
yeah.
Does anyone have questions?
How fast did the rocket car go?
258 miles an hour. Full
Which
burn.
stretch of road?
Douglas out of Douglas on that flat. A flame in the night. Oh. Well, it probably would have gone airborne at 70 miles an hour.
Sometimes you should stop while you're ahead.
Pardon? Oh, it did, yes.
Yeah, but it spoiled it.
It spoiled it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's called Mule Pass, and what they actually did, they brought the copper up over that same hill and down that canyon, and they finally built a railroad there from Bisbee in 1888-89 because it was just too much trouble. They did come out with a device called the Geronimo steam tractor to pull the wagons instead of mules, and it would run out of steam about halfway to Fairbanks, so they couldn't use it. But they put in the Arizona Southeastern Railroad that went from Bisbee. It went around down toward Hereford, and then it tied in at about before Fairbanks. So, yeah.
Do we know specifically
Yeah.
memorial to it, and yet in some of your literature, or your advertising, you said something about St. David. Well, that's a long way from
No,
St. David.
It actually was about that area, but St. David wasn't there. It's like, what's funny, the Butterfield Overland Mail came through Benson, but Benson wasn't put there till 30 years after the Butterfield Mail came through, so.
You'd have to find the remains of those brave bulls that gave their lives.
Actually, John, we've got something almost as good.
Yes.
One of the Mormons did a painting of the scene at the Battle of the Bulls.
Ah,
And I have matched it photographically to a site approximately 2 miles south of Fairbank.
Miles south of Fairbank.
Yeah. And if you get out in there, you've got that grass that grows in mounds.
Okay.
yes,
It goes up above your head. And
right.
one of the reasons they had so much trouble was the bulls were coming through the grass and they couldn't see them coming.
Oh,
Now, this is fascinating. Now, for the first time, we've got a lock on where that happened. Because you matched the landscape.
And do you know why it was all bulls? The Apaches ate all the cows, and the bulls were sexually frustrated.
And they were the Mormons. Oh, what a terrible thing.
hey, sounds
No, it's
feasible.
true.
Yeah.
The herd died out shortly after that, because the Apaches kept hunting the cows.
Oh,
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, hey, wait, you guys, we have work for you there, Tom.
Okay, today, with our,
Go away.
yeah. Today, we didn't have a great participation. We only have a $9 prize for the 50-50, but at least $9, that's good. So we need to have you pick the winning ticket.
Let's run that up to $10. There you go. I don't need a ticket.
Okay.
You know, you did.
Okay, so
all right.
since you came the furthest, we'll let Mr. all the way from Benson on Highway 80.
Yes.
We'll let you draw the lucky ticket.
This one feels really good.
Okay, the number is, check your tickets, 415886. Who is the lucky winner? Oh, my goodness. Our own Liz won that. And she's a faithful ticket buyer, so here you go.
And folks, we've still got a couple of things here. Gentlemen, we've got a mug for you.
6, 7,
You're gonna have to Monday,
9.
Wednesday, and Friday.
There you go, there's $10.
In other words, we got mugs for coming here.
You got a mug,
Yep,
right?
886.
That's
Okay, there's your $10. Congratulations. Now, he threw in another.
Oh, how nice. Thank you.
If you rise and join me in bidding adios to
Old
old Joe.
Joe.
Adios,
Old Joe, you old buffalo.
Oh, I didn't see. I could ask that. Your signs are getting a lot of attention. Stuff because on the screen now, all the
Yeah, well, you see, I was looking at this one. Yes.
Yes.